This video has been produced with a simple purpose. It is intended to bring together actual important events of the present and the past, to examine if these have any correlation to historical events, and then examine whether these correlations or coincidences could be indicators of what may happen in the future. This was put together by a group of professionals from a broad cross-section of backgrounds, including banking and finance, property management, the civil service, aircraft marketing and maintenance, executive search and executive coaching, and the lay ministry. Let's call these Christians Amats, the watchkeepers. In Hebrew, Amats means to be alert, strong, courageous, stout, brave, bold, and to persist in. At this stage, some viewers may be hesitant to continue watching this video. Perhaps you have heard one too many conspiracy theories, or feel that this is of no concern to you. We hope not. Whatever the reason, we hope that this video will help you reflect on what may happen in the very near future and to arrive at informed decisions and be prepared. In 1492, King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella I of Spain expel all Jews from Spain. Also in 1492, Christopher Columbus discovers the New World, financed by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella from gold and silver taken from the Jews. In 1948, Israel is restored as a nation. Soon after the War of Independence, Israel's land increases by a third. 1967, the Israeli Six-Day War. Israel retakes Jerusalem and its land increases by 3 times. All of these occurred during a biblical lunar tetrad. 2014 to 2015 will also be a biblical lunar tetrad period. The question is, what will happen during this period of 2014 to 2015? A blood moon is a total lunar eclipse. A tetrad is 4 consecutive total lunar eclipses that occur within a span of 2 years. NASA has a catalogue of 5,000 years of lunar eclipses, all calculated mathematically. NASA says there will be 12,064 lunar eclipses, or about 2.4 per year over 5,000 years. For any type of lunar eclipse to occur 4 times in a row, based on the conditional probability theory, the chances are 1 in 1.5 million years. From 1 AD to 2100 AD, there will be 62 tetrads, of which 8 are biblical tetrads. A biblical tetrad is a tetrad whereby the 4 lunar eclipses all fall on Jewish feast days. So the probability of this happening is even more astronomical. 2014 to 2015 is the last biblical tetrad for another 567 years. The next one will be in 2582 to 2583. So what does the Bible say about tetrads? The Bible does not specifically use the term tetrad. However, the Bible makes several references to the sun, the moon, and the stars, both in the Old and the New Testaments. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says, "Then God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years." Is this prophecy being foretold? The first blood moon in the tetrad of 2014 to 2015 was on April 15, 2014. It fell on the Passover. Have there been any significant events involving Israel since then? These could be existing or significant threats for the future. The simple answer is yes. 9 days after the first tetrad on April 24, 2014, Israel suspended peace talks with the Palestinians after the Fatah-Hamas deal. Soon after, Hamas released more than 1,000 rockets on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The Israeli Defense Force, or IDF, crossed into Gaza to destroy established bases from which the rockets were launched. They also targeted the closing of more than 40 underground tunnels, many found with weapons and fake IDF uniforms, opening up in various parts of Israel. More events followed. On June 29, 2014, ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, proclaimed itself a worldwide caliphate, with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi named as its caliph. In less than a year, ISIS has grabbed the headlines with its brutal killings, torture, beheadings, all professionally executed in a planned strategic mission to eventually Islamicize the world. The second blood moon occurred on October 8, 2014, on the Feast of Tabernacles, another holy day in the Jewish calendar. More events have taken place since then. ISIS continues to behead innocents, Christians and young children. January 31, 2015, Kenji Goto, a Japanese journalist, after Japan announced it would contribute $200 million towards the Western-led initiative against ISIS. Negotiations for his release failed after Japan refused to agree to pay a ransom for his release. The demand? $200 million. His only crime was returning to Iraq to rescue his Japanese friend. Was the fact that he was a Christian, very rare among Japanese, also a factor? Another significant event occurred on March 18, 2015. Prime Minister Netanyahu was re-elected after a nail-biting election in which many had predicted he would lose. His relations with President Obama was one of, if not the worst, among Israeli prime ministers and US presidents. The third blood moon fell on April 4, 2015. Again, it fell on the Passover. What other events which were significant for Israel or the Jews happened after the third blood moon? On July 14th, after more than a decade of negotiations, a six-nation group of countries, led by the US, arrived at an agreement with Iran to restrict its nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. President Obama hailed the talks as one which was built on verification, not on trust. He also warned that he would veto any objections from Congress. On the other hand, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a historic mistake. He said that this was a jackpot for Iran to have billions of dollars to wage proxy wars through its allies in the region. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei withheld his verdict on the nuclear deal and on July 19 said, "Whether the deal is approved or disapproved, we will never stop supporting our friends in the region and the people of Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Bahrain, and Lebanon." On July 20th, the UN Security Council unanimously passed a resolution that would lift economic sanctions on Iran. Prime Minister Netanyahu responded, "The hypocrisy knows no bounds." Netanyahu warned that Iran had systematically violated prior council resolutions and still calls for the destruction of Israel. Obama tried to assure Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other allies in the Middle East that the agreement provided for an immediate snapback clause to impose sanctions again if Iran fails to live up to the terms of the agreement. Yet, Middle East experts are concerned that the main problem remains the verification of Iranian compliance. In reality, snapping back on economic sanctions cannot be implemented overnight. For the 2014-2015 tetrad, there will be the fourth and last blood moon, which will fall on September 28, 2015. Will there be even more significant events? While it is true that nobody can predict with 100% certainty what will happen in the future, we do know that God speaks to His people and that we have been created with a mind that is able to comprehend what He says. One of the ways that He speaks to us is through His creation. And like the wise men who studied the ancient texts and were eventually led to Bethlehem, it might be wise to study creation's messages. Interestingly, the lunar eclipse on September 28th is called a supermoon because it can be clearly seen all over Jerusalem. And what might the latest tetrad be telling us? It is not necessarily the harbinger of the end of the world. Though biblical tetrads are associated with Israel and the Jews, history has shown that there are often wide-reaching circumstances in the Middle East and the world. Could indeed the truly astronomical, mathematical probabilities and correlations surrounding the tetrads and events in the past be a clear warning that things are not business as usual? Let's now examine the next possible coincidence, the shemitah cycle. A look at the major crises that have affected the world and when they occurred might give us a clue that things may not pan out as expected and that we should heed the signs that have been given to us. For example, is there a correlation between the shemitah cycle and the financial crises that affected the world? Is it a coincidence that the dramatic collapse of financial markets following the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, and the global financial crisis of 2008 fell on shemitah years, on the very same date of the Jewish calendar, Elul 29? Or that every major economic or financial disaster on earth occurred during shemitah years, including World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II? Let's take a look at this chart. Clearly, there is an irrefutable correlation between financial, economic crises and shemitah years. The two most recent shemitah years are particularly significant. Both September 11, 2001 and September 29, 2008 fell on Elul 29, the last day of the shemitah year. Could something similar happen in 2015? Are there more signs, other coincidences? The biblical tetrads and the shemitah have clearly revealed that there is a very high probability that significant events would occur very soon, possibly starting even before the September 2015 period, or from September 2015 and running through the rest of 2015 and early 2016. Could the Bible be revealing some of these signs? Could we be seeing signs relating to prophecy being repeated today? In Genesis 41, in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh has a dream. He dreams of 7 sleek and fat cows and 7 ugly and gaunt cows. The ugly cows eat up the fat ones. In his second dream, Pharaoh dreams of 7 heads of grain, full and good, and 7 heads of grain, withered and thin, scorched by the east wind, sprout up. The 7 withered grains eat up the good grain. He cannot understand his dream, and none of his wise men and magicians could interpret the dream for him. His chief cupbearer tells Pharaoh he knows of a young Hebrew named Joseph who can, as he had done so before. Joseph is called before Pharaoh. Joseph says that he cannot interpret the dream, but God can. He explains that the 2 dreams are one and the same. 7 fat cows are 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. The withered 7 heads of grain also represent famine. The famine will be so severe that the 7 years of abundance will be forgotten. God has revealed this to Pharaoh in 2 forms because it has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. Let's fast forward to September 2014. This calf was born on September 25, 2014. It was also the first day of the Jewish shemitah year, 1st Tishrei 5775. It was born in Loretto, Pennsylvania. The calf was named Ben. It had a large, beautiful font 7 on its forehead. A red heifer, also born on September 25, 2014 in Texas, named Shemitah. it has a much smaller, simpler 7 on its head. Could it be that these 2 calves are the 2 witnesses of things to come? Rabbi Jonathan Kahn says that these are very clear signs of impending judgment from God, essentially repeating what happened to Egypt during Joseph's time. He quotes Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15. One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of any crime or offense they may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. But there are more signs. And are we not noticing the number and frequency of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, pestilences, and more? On Boxing Day, December 26, 2004, the Sumatra Andaman earthquake with a magnitude 9.2, the world's 3rd largest recorded earthquake, caused the deaths of 230,000 dead in 14 countries. On March 11, 2011, a horrific tsunami and earthquake hit Japan. According to the official report of March 2015, 15,891 people were killed, 12,584 were missing, and 6,152 injured. More than 220,000 still live outside their homes, either in temporary housing or due to permanent relocation. On April 25, 2015, Nepal experienced a major earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8, followed by a second one on May 12th with a magnitude of 7.3. More than 8,800 deaths were recorded. But the devastation was compounded because of the poor conditions of buildings and infrastructure. The number of homeless topped 2 million, and the cost of rebuilding the country has been estimated to be above $10 billion. And we see the resurgence of pestilences. The Ebola virus in West Africa, which has killed more than 11,000 people as of May 2015. Many may have forgotten that in 2009, the world saw a flu pandemic caused by H1N1. Initial WHO estimates were that 18,000 died from it. However, further in-depth research in 2012, supported by WHO, revised estimates to 284,500 deaths from the pandemic. And from SARS, global deaths exceeded 8,000 in 2003. As at July 27, 2015, South Korea has declared it is free from MERS, which killed 36 people, infected 186, and quarantined almost 17,000 people since the first case was confirmed on May 20, 2015. Though it is still a relatively small number, it is the largest outbreak outside of Saudi Arabia. A World Health Organization (WHO) team of experts has said that South Korea's outbreak was large and complex. Could other similar or mutated viruses emerge again, worse than the deadly flu pandemic in 1918 to 1920? Some called it the Spanish flu, that infected 500 million people worldwide and killed 50 to 100 million people. Are even the heavens telling us something through signs? On February 15, 2013, a huge asteroid hit Chelyabinsk in the Urals of Russia. Amazingly, no one died as it landed in an unpopulated area. However, hundreds of thousands were terrified, and up to 1,200 people were injured by the sheer force of shattering glass in other damaged parts of their homes as the asteroid zoomed by, near enough to cause electrical outages and physically shaking up houses and buildings, but no deaths. Was this yet another warning? Could the next asteroid fall on heavily populated areas with unimaginable results? And the physical signs in the heavens and on earth are not the only signs evident around us. Consider the radical change in attitudes, behaviors, and values. Ruthless evil, deception, greed, self-centeredness, self-glorification, instant gratification, unabashed pride, rationalization, and compromise of long-standing tenets have all reached new heights. These have permeated into all levels: personal, organizational, communities, nations, and the world at large. Before the Great Flood, the Bible tells us that God was grieved at the horrific state of lawlessness and sin in the world. Could these be signs that a reset of humanity is near, akin to what happened in the days of Noah? Jesus speaks of the end times. Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 to 8 says, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Joel chapter 2 verse 31 says, "The sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." Do all these signs portend the second coming of the Lord?
Now, some Christians have asked me about why should we be concerned about heavenly signs that takes place in the heaven. Now, there's a verse in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. It goes like this. Let me read it for you. It says, "And God said, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." For seasons, for days and years, it's quite clear, right? But for signs, what does that mean? Now, in the Bible dictionary, the word signs there refers to an omen, miraculous event that points to something else. Well, yes, I think the heavenly bodies are important, or looking at heavenly bodies are important, because when God uses that, He captures the attention of the whole earth. Right? Whatever happens in the heavenly captures the attention of the whole earth. I would think that, we always must live our lives right before God. Right? And particularly so when we see evidence pointing to the imminent return of Jesus Christ.
While all these signs have been referred to in the Bible, there are a few other events that have not occurred yet before the second coming of Jesus Christ. These include the appearance and ascendance of the Antichrist. There will also be greater persecutions and suffering which will test the faithfulness of individual followers of Jesus Christ. Yes, there will be great tribulation before Jesus returns in glory. The first question is, how many Christians are aware of, or if they are, really believe that time is short? The second question, what are they doing about it? How many are living a life of purpose, community with other believers, and the ability to view all issues from a different perspective, God's perspective? Perhaps life on this earth is too comfortable for them, and they cannot imagine that eternal life is beyond the material, the sights we can see, and the things we can feel. Perhaps they hold hidden sins and are reluctant to give them up. Perhaps their understanding of Scripture is not based on solid biblical principles for various reasons, such as believing in pre-tribulation, when not a single verse in the Bible specifically supports it. Perhaps it is much easier to listen to a non-threatening, pleasant, and even seductive promises than to the hard truths which Jesus Himself taught. Because of all these reasons and more, the task for all who do believe becomes even more challenging. To be right with God, influence the believers, and introduce Christ to the pre-believers. It is not just the work of the dioceses, elders, clergy, and pastoral staff. It is the honorable task, duty, and joy of every single person who calls Jesus Christ Lord and Savior to share the best news in history. It is a message of God's saving grace, hope, and love. It does not matter if the Great Shaking doesn't begin exactly on September 13th or September 28th, 2015, but all the signs show that things will happen in a not too distant future. Is it not better to be prepared than to be taken totally by surprise? Is it not better to be ready for suffering and persecution than to be totally caught off guard? Romans chapter 8 verse 18 says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed to us."